My name is Haley. I'm a 40-year-old who's gotten into the habit of browsing quick recipes on Twitter whenever I have some free time. Lately, I've been finding a lot of microwavable meals, which is a godsend for a busy housewife like me. My husband doesn't realize these are easy dishes. He thinks I'm making elaborate meals, which makes me seem like a wonderful wife. I just hope he never catches on to the truth. Anyway, today I want to share a story that really troubled me. Something I went through with my mom friends. I think it's worth hearing. It happened about 5 years ago. A family named Price moved into the apartment next to ours. Our family consists of my husband Wyatt, myself, and our 10-year-old daughter Paisley. The Price family, just like us, is a family of 3 with a 10-year-old daughter. To be honest, I'm not great at neighborhood relations, but as our kids are the same age, I found myself getting involved with Arya, the wife, especially regarding elementary school matters. At first, it was fine, but then I started to feel something was off the first time I invited Arya and her daughter Avery to our house. While the kids were playing and we were chatting, Arya suddenly asked, "Do you have any children's clothes you don't need?" "Unwanted clothes? No, we either throw them away or turn them into cleaning rags," I replied honestly. Arya's eyes lit up. "What a waste! Next time you have clothes you don't need, give them to me. Avery and Paisley are about the same height, you know." "No, that's not it." I didn't like the idea of giving my daughter's used clothes to a neighbor's child. Some might say, just give them away, but I felt uncomfortable seeing the clothes my child wore being worn by the girl next door. You might think I'm being oversensitive and germophobic, but I just couldn't get past that feeling. Arya pressed, "You don't have to give anything fancy. Even socks or underwear would be fine." "What?" I thought, feeling even more repulsed. It was bad enough with clothes, but the idea of giving used socks or underwear, even to a neighbor, was too much. I politely declined, but Arya wasn't the type to give up easily. Her requests grew more audacious. It wasn't just about children's clothes anymore. She started eyeing my clothes, saying, "Wow, Haley, your outfit is lovely. Give it to me when you're done with it." Even if she didn't directly say, "Give it to me," she'd persistently remark, "Wow, the jewelry is nice. I want it." Realizing her "I want it" implied "give it to me," I'd brush her off with, "Oh, this? You can find it at any accessory store," and pretended to be oblivious. For my child's sake, I wanted to avoid any trouble, so I thought it's best to keep my distance from Arya. I started changing the times I'd leave the house, paying attention to the sounds from next door to avoid bumping into her. Creepy, right? But it's all to protect my child. I never had any fondness for Arya. In fact, the opposite is true, and I hated having to act like a stalker. But all my efforts were in vain. Arya started showing up unannounced, ringing our doorbell and barging in without warning. Without any prior arrangement, she'd announce her arrival from the other side of the door. My daughter Paisley, unaware of everything, would get excited to play with Avery, making it impossible for me to pretend we weren't home. Reluctantly, I had to let Arya and Avery in more often than I'd like. It's hard when the kids get along so well, you can't just turn them away. And sure enough, as soon as Arya entered, she'd start with her requests. "Oh, Paisley's grown a bit, hasn't she? That outfit must be getting small. Let me know when you're getting rid of it." I knew that explaining myself wouldn't get through to her, so I told her straight, "Sorry, but we have uses for things even after they're no longer needed, so I can't give them to you." I thought she might apologize or show some remorse, but Arya just pouted and snapped, "Geez, stingy." Really? I thought to myself, isn't it more stingy to not buy your child clothes and beg others for theirs? I wanted to grab her by the collar with an angry face, but I couldn't do that with Paisley and the other kids happily playing nearby. Calm down, Haley, I told myself, using the Lamaze breathing techniques I learned when I gave birth to Paisley, trying to soothe my rage-filled heart. Arya laughed at me. "What are you doing, Haley?" But it was all for Paisley's sake. Let her laugh. If Lamaze can help me avoid neighborhood drama, then it's worth it. I then consulted with my husband, Wyatt, and based on his advice, we tried to leave the house when Arya was likely to come over. We went shopping or to the park with Paisley, trying to minimize our interactions with Arya. There was a suggestion to confront her more aggressively, but that would only sour our future relations, especially since our kids are in the same class and we live close by. We needed to maintain a peaceful environment. Wyatt and I finally settled on this approach, and gradually our interactions with Arya decreased. The kids still played together at school, so we weren't cutting off their relationship entirely. That seemed like a fair compromise. I was relieved and thought it was a great success. But then, it happened one day. Paisley told me excitedly about how a friend and their dad went to a new hamburger shop and it was amazing. Turns out, going to this newly opened burger joint with a parent had become a sort of trend among the kids. Seems like knowing about new things is a status symbol at their age. They're growing up so fast. With that in mind, and seeing Paisley's eagerness, I figured a hamburger treat wouldn't hurt, so I took her to the buzzed-about shop. The owner was friendly, and the place had a fresh, clean interior. It's definitely a welcoming spot for families. The taste was, well, average, but Paisley was so happy, and that's what mattered. We were enjoying our burgers when, suddenly, "Haley, what a surprise! Fancy seeing you here!" It was Arya, smiling wide. I was so startled I almost choked on my food. All my efforts to avoid her, and here she was at this exact moment. "Wow, I heard this place was trending among kids, so I thought I'd check it out. Looks like it's true," Arya said casually. That's right. If it's a trend among kids, Arya would have heard about it too. I was naive. But what can I do? I wanted to make my child happy. As I sat there, it began to dawn on me. Why should we have to avoid our own home just to keep away from her? My irritation grew. And then, without even asking, Arya sat down at our table. I wished she'd go sit somewhere else. There were other seats available. "But this works out perfectly." What? I couldn't grasp what Arya was getting at. "Well, since Haley's here, I don't need to order anything." What? "I'll grab a plate. Just give me a bite." Excuse me? Coming to a restaurant and not ordering? That's not the same as sharing with a child who can't finish their meal. Is Arya my child now or what? I wanted to say so much, but was too stunned to speak. "No, I'm almost done and Paisley's been looking forward to the burger. Just order something. It's rude to the restaurant." When I finally managed to say that, Arya again exclaimed, "Huh?" and pouted her lips, probably thinking I was being stingy. But in this situation, isn't Arya the stingy one? "Okay, then just give me the meat for my child's dinner." "That's ridiculous. Impossible. Order your own." The thought of her child eating leftovers from someone else's meal was so revolting. I blurted out my true feelings. Even if I'm not a germaphobe, Isn't this situation universally disgusting? Who just asks for meat? That's a far cry from asking for a bite, right? Oh, that's so mean. Why can't you just give me a piece of meat? It's too stingy to say no when you have such a big one. You never give me anything. It's weird to expect to get something every time. Of course we're going to eat all the meat. I blurted out a logical response to Arya's ridiculous statement. Seeing Paisley and the other customers staring in shock, I realized I might have gone too far. But Arya was glaring at me with obvious dissatisfaction. Right? I'm not the weird one here, am I? Refusing to give away meat is normal, right? Fine, I'll order myself, Arya declared and went to the counter, placing her order. But she only ordered 5 chicken tenders. Come on, you could make that at home. The chicken tenders, apparently pre-made, were quickly brought to our table. But then, the surprise came. Arya took out a small clear plastic bag from her purse and, to my shock, put the chicken tenders directly into it. A takeout in disguise. And, as I gaped in disbelief, Arya smiled and said, "Thanks for the dinner. Bye." What? I was still stunned when Arya left the restaurant with Avery, leaving the bill behind. She dined and dashed, or rather, took and ran. What do you even call this? The owner, who seemed to have been watching from afar, approached me hesitantly. Who will be paying for this? It made sense, given we were sitting together. To outsiders, we probably looked like friends. Paisley watched me with concern as I stared at the 2 bills on the table. Arya's chicken tenders were just $6. I made a decision. I didn't want to pay. I wanted to complain, to explain to the owner that I was victimized by a terrible person. I wanted to make a scene. I've been wronged by a horrible person. But causing a scene would only upset Paisley, who had been looking forward to coming here. She might think it was her fault for asking to come. It might even make it awkward for us to come back to this restaurant in the future. No choice then. Yes, I'll pay, I said with a forced smile to the owner, deciding to cover Arya's bill as well. The next day, I woke up to several texts from my mom friends on the mobile phone. As I've mentioned before, I'm not really into neighborhood relations. My connection with these mom friends isn't particularly close. We're in a very casual relationship. After great progression at the PDO meeting, we exchanged contacts out of necessity. But our usual interactions are minimal. Why so many texts? Nervously, I opened them. Is this true? It's causing a stir in our mom's friends' WhatsApp group chat? If it's not, you should clear it up for your child's sake. It's spreading among other moms and it's not looking good. Each message was similar with a URL attached. The URL led to Arya's Twitter. I was shocked when I saw her post. Haley, Paisley's mom, always nags us for clothes and jewelry. The other day she barged in while we were eating burgers and yelled at us to pay for her. Seriously scary. When I refused, she hit my child. It was terrible. Everyone should keep their kids away from that house. What is this? It was Arya who was demanding and wanted the meat. I never hit a child. This was a complete fabrication. But the tweet had been retweeted so many times, spreading the lie. This was bad. I can handle being slandered, but I didn't want it affecting my child. If this continued, other kids might start ignoring Paisley on their parents' orders. What to do? For now, I responded to all the texts saying, I do not do such things, and explained Arya's past behavior. But I wasn't sure if they'd believe me. After much thought, I decided to keep Paisley home for the day. Luckily, tomorrow was classroom observation and a PTO meeting. I vowed to clear things up then. The next day, I sent Paisley off with a heavy heart, but relieved to see her happy during the classroom observation. I was worried she might have a hard time, but thankfully, the children seemed unaffected by the adults' issues. But this might not be the end of it. Indeed, Arya and her husband Aiden were glaring sharply at us. I was a bit surprised to see them both there, but I couldn't let fear get the better of me. I had to prove my innocence for Paisley's smile. Unfortunately, Wyatt had been on a business trip since the day before yesterday, so he couldn't be here. However, he called this morning, despite being busy, and told me to hang in there and contact him immediately if anything happened. He's such a kind and reliable husband, even from afar. I'm not alone. I'm glad I chose him. After the classroom observation went smoothly, the PTO meeting began. Let's start with the first item. Have any of you parents been experiencing any issues with your children recently? Asked the teacher. I raised my hand and said, I have something I'd like to discuss. Recently, Avery's mom, Arya, has been slandering me baselessly on the internet. I started, causing a stir in the class. It seemed like most people knew about the issue and were curious about its truth. I could hear whispers, wondering if I really hit a child. For a while now, I've been troubled by Arya's behavior. Every time our kids played together, she persistently asked for my child's old clothes and even for things I was wearing. I tried to avoid her as much as possible. She started showing up at my house uninvited, and I had to firmly refuse her requests. But she wouldn't listen. The teacher watched silently, and the other parents looked unsure who to believe. I could have argued with her and ended the relationship, but I didn't want to tear apart our kids' friendship. I thought it was better to endure it as a parent. The parents seemed to understand, nodding in agreement. But Arya didn't consider my feelings at all. She begged for the meat. I was eating at a hamburger shop we coincidentally ran into. There were gasps and murmurs of disbelief at the mention of the meat. Good. It was right to think it was weird. Give me your underwear, socks, old pillows, and finally the meat from your hamburger. There was a visible recoil from the mention of Arya's actions. Aiden, apparently unaware of Arya's past behavior, looked at her coldly. It's not true! Haley is lying! She begged us for things and then hit Avery! Arya protested. Who's lying? We have witnesses, you know, I retorted. Huh? Ignoring Arya's confused look, I turned to the teacher and said, Please, can you call him in? The teacher nodded and went to the hallway, then returned with a man. Some people recognized him and gasped. Yes, he was the owner of the hamburger shop. He was the only witness to that day's events, and I had asked him to come here, despite it being a huge favor. Yesterday, I visited the hamburger shop again and explained the situation, begging him to come to the PTO meeting. I knew it was an odd request and was prepared for him to refuse. However, the owner readily agreed to help, saying, I was a bit concerned about the atmosphere from an outsider's perspective, and you graciously paid for the meal that was supposed to be unpaid. It was thanks to you that the other customers didn't feel uncomfortable. I don't mind helping out. I had already informed the teacher, ensuring that the owner could enter the school without any issues. The owner left his newly opened shop in his wife's care to come here and testify about what happened that day. In front of everyone, he described how Arya had appeared while I was eating, begged for meat, and left without paying for her chicken tenders after being refused. The parents were appalled by his words, and their glances towards Arya turned icy. It's not true! Besides, it's her fault for not giving me anything. No clothes, no jewelry, no underwear. What will she give? Neighbors should share used items. It's win-win. Saves us both the trouble of disposing of stuff and saves money. Despite her denials, Arya admitted to begging. Aiden clearly felt disgusted with her. It seemed no one doubted me anymore. We're neighbors, right? It's normal to be friendly and share things, right? It benefits our children too. Don't judge things from Arya's perspective. I don't want to be friends with someone demanding. And I don't find disposing of things to be a hassle. Being begged for used items by you is the real pain, not win-win at all. My anger spilled out more harshly than I intended. Think about your child. If I had given in and given you stuff, Avery would end up with hand-me-downs from her friends. You wouldn't have liked that as a child, right? What you're doing is making your child sad. If you want used items so badly, alter your own clothes for her. Before relying on other parents, make sacrifices yourself. That's what a parent does. Some applause broke out as I spoke. I knew I wasn't wrong, but now I felt confident. This issue is definitely a case of slander by Arya. Last night, the security camera footage from the owner's restaurant confirmed the situation. There was no act of hitting a child. Huh? Arya's eyes widened at the teacher's words. Lying isn't acceptable, Arya. You surely teach your child not to lie, right? If a parent does that, it sets a bad example. Please be a responsible mother for your child. Acting all high and mighty! For a moment, Arya's shoulders shook with anger. However, the parent's chuckles at her expense seemed to embarrass her, and her face turned red as she looked down. Arya, this is too much. It's not you who's embarrassed by lying, it's me and Avery. Everyone's laughing at us. Don't just eat and run without paying. But I just wanted to save a bit on living expenses. Before saving on living expenses, we're the ones floating in embarrassment here. Are you saying my salary isn't enough? Oh dear. The prices were now openly quarreling. I should have noticed earlier, I admit. But who would think to do such things? I can't even begin to reprimand you. Think about common sense for the sake of our child. Why? Why is everyone blaming me? He's also... Arya started to make a scene, crying loudly. But Aiden pulled her out of the classroom. Thus, with the help of the hamburger shop owner, the teacher, and the other parents, my innocence was finally proven. 5 years later, at the PTO meeting, I made it clear that Avery and Arya are different individuals and should not be seen as the same. Thankfully, Arya's child didn't suffer any consequences. Paisley remained friends with Avery, so I thought it would just be Arya and I who drifted apart. But then, I found out from the landlord, who asked if everything was okay, that Arya had been demanding things from other apartment residents. Despite repeated warnings from the landlord to refrain from excessive neighborhood relations due to complaints, Arya continued her behavior. Within a year of the incident, the Price family was evicted from the apartment. Until elementary school, they relied on Arya's grandparents to avoid transferring Avery to another school. But from middle school, Avery went to a completely different school. It must have been hard for them to stay, especially after it came out that Arya had been demanding things from other mom friends too, earning the nickname Demanding Monster Mom among the parents. No wonder they didn't feel comfortable here, but it's all on her. While I feel sorry for children caught in their parents' wake, Arya's situation was a result of her own actions. Meanwhile, our family is still living in the same apartment, enjoying a peaceful life. I wondered if Paisley would be sad about Avery moving away. Aren't you sad that Avery moved?
No, not really, Mom. Actually, I was a bit troubled because Avery kept asking for pens, jackets, sweaters. I'm a little relieved she's gone.
It turns out Avery also had a demanding nature, so Paisley was actually relieved about the move. Another good thing that happened recently, Wyatt got promoted. His business trips and overtime decreased, our income increased, and we're all happier. For the first time in years, we could take a family vacation. Wyatt even picked up baking as a hobby on his days off, and Paisley started joining him, kneading out her exam stress into the dough. I'm so glad she didn't turn into one of those teenagers who can't stand their dad. Our life didn't turn into one of those dramatic stories where everything goes perfectly. The father becomes a successful CEO, or there's a bitter divorce. But living peacefully, without the fear of Arya's demanding nature, has been our greatest happiness. Oh, and there's one more good thing. Paisley has started winning awards for her piano playing. With Wyatt's increased income, we're thinking of moving to a house where piano playing won't disturb anyone. It's not a flashy high-rise apartment move, but in a way, it's our own happy ending, right? Everyone, cherish the small joys in life.